Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. This is it. We're at the official end of the season. This is the last podcast, last Call of Duty weekend for the Black Ops 6 season. We're going to be back next year, or actually not even next year, a few months from now, for Black Ops 7, hopefully later in the fall/December. But for now, this is it. This is the final bow on this season. This is the last you're going to see Black Ops 6 play competitively. And it's being played in Saudi Arabia for some reason. But that's okay. To break it all down with me, I'm joined as always by my co-host, CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It feels like it's been a year and a half since we last recorded our podcast for Champs, but it's really only been like 6 weeks maybe. But that is still a long time when we're doing this almost every week. Happy to be on Esports World Cup. It's a very different tournament than any other that we get throughout the season. It's a really good end cap, I think, for the Call of Duty title that we're playing. Black Ops 6 has been really fun to watch. I think this tournament should be pretty interesting, just with how the groups were placed based on champs and all that sort of stuff. Excited to talk about it as always, and definitely a little bittersweet that we're here at the end of the season. But yeah, like you said, we're honestly just a few months away from the new game, Black Ops 7, and just knowing that it's a Black Ops game again has me very happy for next season. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. But let's break down to this. So, Models versus Markets weekly recap. Our champs picks, at least for the initial weekend, were not, for at least first day of it, were not particularly good. I did have Miami over Vancouver, which is hilarious, and Vancouver somehow made the final, which you also had. I had London plus 1.5 versus Toronto. That did not happen. But I had FaZe minus 12.5 versus Texas. That also did not happen. You had Miami to reach the final, which looked not bad there for a while, but that did not cash. You had Surge to reach the final and Ultra to reach the final. Only one of them did. And then Doug, poor Doug, getting absolutely wiped here. Thieves went at, 0-6 out, I believe?
Yeah.
And then even then, somehow Miami didn't cover the plus 17.5 versus Vancouver despite winning the match. Yeah, very rough weekend, at least the initial days. But again, I did make it back later in champs, but the problem is that when you have these tournaments and you're just on the first day, to pick 3 things on the first day, whatever. But it's fine, yeah. But a bit rough for us there on that first day of champs. I think we'll kind of talk a bit more about champs later, but just kind of because we have more to recap in terms of champs. So just kind of looking at the combined model plays weekly recap. This is what we had. We actually had Miami map 2, but we didn't have a lot of plays. There were just a couple of plays there. Not too great. The yearly recap is not bad. We did end the year up some. We ended the year up about 2.5 units. That was mostly you carrying that, though. You definitely carried throughout the thing. It was kind of getting closer to even. Fell off the last couple of weeks there. But yeah, again, we broke even. Not bad in terms of our straight-up picks. And then the combined model plays yearly recap, you could see that they didn't do particularly good. They struggled midway through the season, but then they did bounce back there a bit. Model accuracy, yearly recap. So how did you calculate this graph?
Yeah, could you just go back a couple slides for a sec? I just want to touch on the combined model plays, just for a sec. And this was something I noticed when I was tracking this last season as well. We ended up in the negative by quite a bit on the year. We were down, let me see here, about almost 16 units. But again, I'm punching in anything that both of our models has as a value bet, even if it's by 1/10 of a percentage point. And a lot of times our combined model plays will say, there might be 3 or 4 things in one match that they're all aligned on, which the more you bet into a single market, the worse off you are because you're taking vig on every bet that you're doing. So I do want to make maybe a tweak for next year where, let's say there's a certain match that both of our models really like Team A, and there's value on their money line, the spread, map 1, map 2, and map 3, right? Like how we normally would put that in, I would put that in as 5 separate plays, each that are 1 unit. And we might hit all 5 of those, right? If that Team A sweeps, that's 5 wins. But next season, I may just want to point us in one direction. If we prefer the money line or the spread, let's just play those and let the specific map spreads go to the wayside. I think betting specific maps can be good, but it's a little fluky at times based on which team takes Team A versus Team B. Like, we might like a team as a pretty big underdog in hardpoint, but that might not come through till map 4, and we're only taking like map 1 into consideration for a lot of these. I think just for next year, maybe we'll shrink the amount of total model plays. Not that I think our combined models did bad by any means. We definitely had our ups and downs, but like just consolidating those into one clean bet of like, we like this team, let's take them in just the money line or just the map spread, that sort of thing. Yeah, maybe we'll see how that goes for next year, but just wanted to caveat with it looks worse than it actually is because we're betting into the market a lot of times, multiple times for these matches. Yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
model
this
model
accuracy. So this is something I tracked in the background. I didn't really tell you about this at all throughout the season. So this does not include every match that was played in the CDL this season, just the ones that we talked about this year that we had win probability graphs for you, me, and the market. So it essentially counts every online qualifier match, the opening rounds of each of the minors, and each of the majors. Nothing on major day 2, 3, 4, or champs day 2, 3, 4. Like, we just didn't have numbers for those when we recorded, and I didn't want to hassle you to get those every time there was a new match. So it still takes into consideration a ton of matches throughout the year. The exact number is 145. So it's a lot. It goes from Major 1 Week 3, which was, I believe, like early January, and then it goes all the way through the opening round of champs. So it's a lot of matches. And essentially what I did was I said, you get as many win probability points as you had that team winning, that eventually won the match. So let's say you had Team A 60% to win, the market had them 55% to win, and I had it as a 50-50. And Team A wins. You would get 60 points, the market would get 55 points, and I would get 50 points. And I did that for every match throughout the year. So you can see, as time goes on, all of our models converged on itself. Like, it's very impressive to see how stacked on top of each other we got towards the end. Right out the gate, I suppose I was doing well through the first couple weeks. Then the market really caught up to me and took the lead for most of the season. And then as we got to that finish line, your model really came up to speed and matched us at the tail end. So I do have exact numbers, but yeah, we're essentially all tied. My total accuracy number was 60.6%. So on average, that's the amount of win probability I got for any given match, 60.6. The market was at 60.5, and you were at 60.3. I don't know. We're all right there. I think you can just say we set the market. We are the market in a way. But no, I just thought it was interesting to track that throughout the year, see what kind of hot periods, cold periods each of us had. And yeah, as you can see, there's a ton of volatility early in the year when there were fewer matches. And then as we got on, things really smoothed out. So what I expected to see, but just interesting to put it in a visualization like this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is really cool. It's cool that you track this without me even knowing about this. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting how, again, there was periods where all models were doing a bit better. I think off the gate, I think there's a small little blip there where I was actually in the lead. But again, you did have a lead for a lot longer in the season, though. For several weeks into Major 2, then the market took over. But again, even then, it was very close. And you and the market basically tracked each other for the entire back end of the season. My model caught up then. And it's interesting how it seems as though for Call of Duty and for college football, my model always gets better the later we get into the season. That seems like a thing where, especially in college football, my model definitely gets stronger at the tail end of the season. So that's something to think about as to maybe why it gets there and why it's a bit off earlier on. But again, even then, even in just showing it apart here, this part, okay, this seems like a big difference, but it's the difference between 61 and 63. like a couple points.
It's a
it's
couple
nothing.
percentage points at any given time once you're that late in the season. And then, sure enough, by the very end of the season, you had completely closed that gap. So, interesting that late surge in your model. Mine hit its stride right at the halfway point of the season, and I guess very early in the season. And again, we're kind of chopping off the first 2 weeks because our models don't really have enough data to work off of. And it's of like day 2, 3, 4 matches aren't included, those best of sevens. I thought about maybe including futures in this sort of thing, but then that isn't really like a head-to-head. You're talking about a market where there's 12 different things you could take into consideration. And me, or any one of us hitting on, I had this team 10% to win the major. The market only had that at 8%. That's going to skew things in this model because this is going off of 50-50s essentially in matches. So one other thing I just wanted to note, and then we can move on from this, was the market number that I assigned was adjusted to take the juice, the vig out of consideration. So if it had a match that was minus 120, I would just do the calculation like, okay, they have a 54% chance to win on either team. You divide that 54 by the total amount of win probability it's assigning, which is, in that case, 108%, and then you get a 50-50. So that is taken into account. Had I not taken that into consideration, the market would be winning by probably 3 or 4 percentage points, but I thought it was fair to adjust it down so VIG wasn't a thing. Anyway, we can move on, but maybe another thing we can track next year as well.
Yeah, we're gonna talk, I think, more about this in the off season. Is how to track some of these bets. I think we have some more time now in the off season, and we'll think a bit more about this. League news. So now let's talk about champs. So Optic Texas go back-to-back champs, not back-to-back events, back-to-back champs. They won 2025 champs 4-0 and 14-3. This was actually I was wrong. Thieves lost to Boston 3-2. And then lost 0-3 to Surge. I got that wrong. But Thieves, the clear number 1 seed, the clear favorite to win champs, minus 138 to win champs, didn't make it out of losers round 1. Optic went on an absolute rampage, just running through everyone, didn't lose a single match all year. Ultra beat Ravens 3-1, then they got swept by Optic, and then they got swept out by Surge again. FaZe again got absolutely hammered. They lost 0-3 to Optic. They beat Ravens 3-0, but then they got 3-0'd by Heretics. A 3-6 map count on a weekend is not particularly great. Breach somehow, for the first time, had a really good event somehow, making it to the elimination finals and losing in 5 games. What an insane run by them, to be honest with you. An absolutely insane run by them. But then again, Optic did go back-to-back. And again, I think a huge part of that is due to Mercules. There's no way you can in any way limit the amount that should be given to Mercules on that. It's absolutely insane how he's completely turned around this team in just weeks. Well, it's more than weeks now, but at the time it was weeks. But no, again, just an insane turnaround from this team. What are your thoughts on this? Is Optic now just the best team again? We saw this last year where they won this, but they didn't do as well in the EWC. What do you think Optic is going to do going forward?
Yeah, I expect them to just keep this roster, and we know that they have the same roster going into the Esports World Cup. Those rosters have been released, and we'll discuss them in a little while here. But yeah, so first off, I just want to say that this champs was probably the most fun chaotic champs that we've had since the CDL has been a thing. Just from memory, it feels like champs every year is relatively chalky, and this definitely feels like the least chalky that we've had yet, which makes it really fun. And one thing I mention every year at champs is that the way the tournament is designed, you would actually expect more underdog teams to do well. And a lot of that is just due to the fact that the regular elimination round 1 that we have is pushed up by 1 round, if that makes any sense. So in theory, winners round 1 matches, the first matches of the tournament at champs, matter less, right? Because instead of dropping down to the losers bracket to play a team that started there, you're essentially starting now, if you lose right away, you're starting in elimination round 2, essentially. There's just one less game you have to win now in order to make your run to the finals. So yeah, it shakes things up a little bit, and I don't think it gets talked about enough just because we've had all of these relatively chalky champs brackets of years past, and it's minor percentages here and there for how far that these underdog teams can go. But yeah, in the best of 9 in the grand finals, that's its own thing. Like that, again, is a small tweak to the best of 7, but that can buoy the really good team. If you are a really good team and you make the finals, you should be happy because it's a best of 9. The more maps you have, the less variance we get. Yeah, just a crazy week. Like, I would say every team, their placement was in a spot that was not really expected for them to end up at, outside of like Royal Ravens. They went 0-2, they won 1 map. They played 2 very good teams, but we knew Royal Ravens, they're the 6th seed, but he really struggled down the stretch of the season. They flamed out, but everybody else was all over the place. Optic, for me, before champs, I lumped Optic in with Surge, Heretics, and Toronto. I had that group of 4 very tight, and that was just based off like some adjusted numbers I had made, just looking back on like matches with the current rosters that were in place. And all 4 of those teams were really, really tight. Heretics were a dominant Surge team and solid everywhere else. Surge was great in Hardpoint and iffy in the other 2 modes. Optic was a tricky one because we had only seen Mercules for a short amount of time, but when he was in the lineup, they looked awesome. But we had a ton of data from early in the season where, like, I didn't want to include the Pred stuff. I really just wanted to include the Hook games and all that sort of stuff. And then Ultra was kind of like steady Eddie all year. Solid team, but they weren't Thieves or FaZe. But yeah, sure enough, Optic, this was, I would say, dominant from them. Like only dropping 3 maps, and all 3 of those being in the grand finals to a very good Surge team. And that's super impressive. Like you come out day 1, beat FaZe 3-0. They have the second best odds to win the tournament. And they stomped them. You get Ultra in round 2. I would say a relatively soft match, but if you're on the other side of the bracket, you're getting Boston or Miami, 2, again, relatively easy matches, but a 3-0 there. They end up getting Breach in the winners finals, another 3-0. So Optic they had a great weekend, but we had seen potential from them with Mercules in the lineup. We hadn't seen a lot of it, but it was there. So everything clicked. The bracket played out fantastic for them. Like avoiding Thieves altogether is awesome. But as far as the Thieves and FaZe go, I really just think it's bad weekends for those teams. And Thieves had lost to Breach a couple of times earlier in the season. And again, it was, I think one of those was in a winners round 1 match from Major 3 or 4. And yeah, it happened. Like sometimes you slip up, and yeah, this was the case where they slipped up in round 1 and then they got Surge in round 1 of the lower bracket. And like, that's just a quality team that you've got to play. You might lose that. And sure enough, they did. So I'm not too worried if I'm Thieves or FaZe going into the Esports World Cup. I am pretty sad that like you placed top 8 and for FaZe top 6. Like you were definitely expecting to make it to Sunday and if not, win the whole thing. Crazy champs, but yeah, super fun to watch, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was very interesting. I think it's kind of weird that Optic, at least some of the players on Optic, Shotzi and Dashy, have the ability to just blend in with a bad team, but then at the same time, they could just perform at this like insane rate and just win. It's crazy that they have that ability as a team. It makes them a very scary team, but as long as they have the right team, they can do it. If not, then that's the thing. So EWC format: 2 days of group play, 2 days of brackets. This is the bracket, not the most clear, but this kind of clears it up a little bit. So you got a 1.8 million prize pool, 600,000 for the winner, 320, 200, 120, 80, 40, and I think 20 each participant. Actually, I'll just ask you right off the top. Do you know? I don't even remember what was the champ prize pool. I don't even remember what the champ prize pool was.
Yeah, so champs was 2 million. The distribution of cash was a little different. It was a little more top heavy for champs, which I like more than what Esports World Cup is doing. Yeah, even if you just show up and don't win a map, you get $20,000. So that's great if you're one of those challengers teams. And I don't know, there's pros and cons to having a flatter payout structure, I think, versus one that's concentrated towards the top. But yeah, it's very comparable to the Champs prize pool as it was last year. It's just under what Champs was. And I think that makes this a really fun tournament. It's the same amount of cash up for grabs, essentially, but we're playing these games in a slightly different way, right? It's essentially like you're playing a 4-team mini bracket, and hopefully you can make it out of that and get into the 8-team, single elimination bracket that decides everything. I think this format is better. I hope one day the COD League can get to 16 teams, or maybe just make their majors like the 12 pro teams and 4 challengers teams that have to qualify to make it, because I do think that this format is awesome. Like, I think pool play makes things super interesting with how groups shake out. You might have a softer group or a more difficult group, and just seeing more games, right? Like, we get so many more matches in this sort of format. Like, you can see the schedule there. We get 20 matches in the first 2 days, and the whole time we have an alpha and a Bravo stream going. So if, the alpha stream is a blowout, you can switch over to the Bravo stream and watch that. Or if they're both good, just pick whichever one you'd prefer. I just love having that option of being able to flip between the two. Or even, right, like you might run into a situation where the alpha stream is at commercial break because they're getting set up for map 3, and the Bravo stream, they're still in the middle of map 2. Just watch that until that ends, come back to the alpha stream. So yeah, I just love that we get all of those matches in those first 2 days. Day 3 and day 4, a little short on matches, but that's just due to the nature of a single elimination bracket. I don't know, maybe we can find a happy medium where we can get like group play, tons of matches on the first 2 days, and then that feeds into a double elimination bracket on day 3 and 4, just to fill out those days a little more. But I think overall, this is a really, really solid schedule we have ahead of us. And then, yeah, one other thing that I wanted to note that's new for this year and has never been done in the CDL era is that coaches for the teams will be allowed on stage for all of the matches that their team is taking part of, and they can communicate with their team. Specifically, in every hardpoint and every control game, they can communicate with their team freely as the game is going on. And then during Search and Destroy, they can talk with their team between rounds. So not during the active game, but they can help maybe set up some attack or defense strategies before the rounds start, or maybe the coaches see something on the map that their players aren't picking up on, and in between a round, the coach can deliver that. So interested to see how much we'll hear on those team listen-ins, like how much is the coach going to be talking, and will it feel like the coach has a big impact? Because I think it will. I think we'll notice certain coaches calling out a lot of stuff and the team using that information for good. And we might see some coaches that are just trying to figure things out like their team is in the moment. Yeah, fascinated to see how that plays out. That's a big thing I'll watch throughout the weekend, just to see how that all plays out. It might be too hectic. There's 5 people on a mic now. It's already hard to tell what's going on when there's 4 people in a listen-in. Yeah, just an interesting nugget there to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that will work. I think this S&D one could be really interesting because you could have them straight up calling plays. Although, quick hit A, something like that. So I think on the S&D, I think that actually could be very interesting to see how that would work. Here are the groups for EWC. Again, as you'll know, some teams are missing because they're using their actual team logos. G2 is replacing Rocker. 100 Thieves is replacing Thieves, obviously. Koi is Ultra. And Heretics is Heretics. But other than that, and LEG is M8, Gentlemates. But again, a lot of familiar faces here. But there's other teams too. In terms of some of these as well, especially because of the loss of the lineup, because they decided to change more roster spots than they could have, so they got replaced. It's pretty funny. Here are the rosters for this, and we're going to go through the rosters as we go through the matches. But a lot of names are going to seem pretty familiar here, right? I'm just looking down here. Capsule Exceed, Fire Hixie, all CDL veterans. Diamond, that's actually a CDL team. Bance, Beans, Harry, Mythic, most of that, 3 of those were CDLs. Two Real, Assault, Bink, and Neum. Again, those are Two Real and Assault were definitely in the CDL at some point. Brack, Prolute, Standy, and Yuli, those are also CDL players. Most of them were CDL players, I believe. And Craze, Mac, Mamba, and Vivid, two of those were CDL players as well. So a lot of former CDL pros just dotting the EWC here. So looking at the first match, we're just going to go through some of these a little bit because some of these are a bit more difficult to recap because we normally will have models and comparison, but the problem is because so many of these matches are CDL versus challengers teams, there's no data. We don't have comparable data on this, so we can just go with it and just see what we have here. So Optic versus 5 Fears. Optic a minus 20,000 on the money line. 5 Fears a 16-1. Optic minus 2.5, minus 225. 5 Fears plus 2.5, plus 162. Optic 89.5 point favorites in the hard point. 2.5 rounds in the search and off the board in the control. Not a good sign. Again, just recapping the 5 Fears team. That's Capsule, Exceed, Fire, and Hixie. So not a horrible team. That would have been like a kind of middle to back of the pack CDL team, I think. Hixie was pretty good. Capsule had some good moments. Exceed and Fire had some good moments. Exceed had less. I think, if I remember correctly, the way we played this last year was we took some shots on the plus 2.5 because a lot of the times they could pick off a map, and some of these teams didn't care about losing a map. So, what are your thoughts on this one? Do you think that we could see some value on the plus 2.5 here? Just looking at this team, I feel like it's going to have to be through search. They're going to have to win through search. Optic is way too strong in hardpoint. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't see how Optic can lose this match. So one thing to note with this 5 Fears team is that they should not even be here. So yeah, like you alluded to, the Carolina Royal Ravens didn't really have a team to field when the cutoff was made for this tournament. Carolina Royal Ravens, that's a whole nother. We could spend like probably 30 minutes just talking about their end of season because it was so bad on so many different levels. They kind of flamed out towards the end of the year. They showed up to champs, were still the 6th seed and had a winnable game, I would say, against Toronto in that first round. But yeah, just they had no juice at the end of the season. And yeah, their midseason roster move to drop Viv, like, I don't know. I don't think it made sense, but they stuck with it. And then, yeah, they screwed this up. And they're not even present at the EWCs. Oops on them. But yeah, 5 Fears, they, I believe, placed top 6 at the champs challengers event. So they were just the next best team. They got the call for EWC and they said, sure, we'll send a team. And yeah, like you said, Capsule, Exceed, Fire, and Hixie, they've all been in the CDL before. Capsule has shown the most, I would say. Hixie has been solid at times. Exceed and Fire have been there. They've been in the league on various different teams. But yeah, I don't know. It's just hard to take them in any aspect just based on what we saw with this Optic team with Mercules. They just ran through champs. And I don't want to like overweight the champs results because that was over a month ago at this point. Like, a lot of time has passed. These games are going to be played halfway across the world. Like you said, Optic, like, they're riding high off of that win. They're probably not doing a ton of preparation for this specific match because they know they can win relatively easily. But, I mean, there might still be some prices here we can keep an eye on. I think I'd actually prefer, rather than take 5 Fears to not get swept, although plus 162, that's a great, like, that's a heck of a payout if they can win one map. It's just really hard to see what that's going to be. It's probably got to be Search, and at that point, just take plus 240 for them to win Search. But I think I actually like the map 2 spread the best. Like, asking them to win 4 rounds of Search and a minus 150 payout, that's not a bad payout, and they don't even have to force a round 11. Like, they just have to get to 4, and they cover that. That seems pretty good. Like, just hold serve on your defense or whatever, and you might get there. So, one other thing to keep in mind, I do think these challengers teams are going to pay a lot of attention to Search. They're probably going to try some funky stuff, right? It feels like that's the map you could pick off if you're one of these challengers teams. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if 5 Fears come out and win the map 2, but I really like their odds to at least get to 4 rounds. Kind of the only thing I see here. I think Optic are deservedly huge favorites in the hard points and in control. But yeah, it's not. Five Fears aren't a team of nobodies. Like, we've heard of these guys before. They placed top 6 at that Challengers event. So maybe they could surprise us. But yeah, it feels like Optic will just take this one pretty easily.
Optic should take it. I will say, though, that if I remember correctly, didn't Optic also didn't they like go to 5 games against the Challengers team last year at EWC right after winning Champs 2, if I remember correctly? Let me check.
Maybe. I think there was one team that kind of... I know Team Falcons were scrappy. They played FaZe, I believe, right away, and I think they still got swept, but they kept all the maps pretty close. So, like, these Challengers teams can definitely make things competitive. I don't think they can win any of these matches, but, like, we might look back. This could be a sweep, but, Five Fears, they only lost by 20 in Hardpoint. They went to around 11 in Search, and we might look back and be like, you know what? They put up a good showing even though they didn't win a match. It could be one of those things. A pat on the back, but you still got blown out in a way. Yeah.
So it was OMB at Brooklyn. They actually lost they lost Optic 3-1. So Optic did drop a game against them, and then they lost 3-1 to, at the time, Las Vegas. And then the closest, like, Stallions 3-0'd Heretics.
Yep, I remember that. That was a pretty big surprise because Miami had been playing pretty well to end the year, and then they just showed up and didn't win a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's possible. Yeah.
And then Falcons wasn't horrible in there. They were competitive against FaZe, and they lost 3-2 to Lore, and they became a CDL team. And M8 also beat M8, a Gentlemate, which was a Challengers team at the time, did beat G2. So, again, I'm looking at team, like, very few of them got swept. A lot of them were able to pick off a game somewhere. And then when they play in the losers bracket ones, they were relative. Some of them actually did win. Yes, it's interesting. We'll have to see. But again, Optic will win this game. I think they could pick off a game, but we'll have to see. Match 2, G2 versus Cloud9, Minnesota versus New York. G2 plus 100 on the money line, Cloud9 minus 138, Minnesota plus 1.5 minus 200, Cloud9 minus 1.5 plus 150. G2 12.5 point underdogs in the hard point, 1.5 round underdogs in the search, and 1.5 round underdogs in the control. I actually have this. I actually have Minnesota favored in this by a significant number, actually, in this. Did you run this model for your model as well?
Yep, I just punched this in, so I'm just using season-long data for both of these teams, and I also have G2 Minnesota favored 55-45, so pretty close overall. And the searches and control I have as like true coin flips, but I have G2 as a slightly better hardpoint team, so that's where their small edge is coming from. So, and if I had to pick a team, like I think I'm with you on this, like I would pick G2, not with a ton of confidence, but with some. But one other thing to factor, Cloud9 are a different team than what they ended the year with, so they're bringing Gwyn on from Royal Ravens, who was clearly their best player, I would say. So you got to think Cloud9 made a slight improvement to their team. G2, same team that we saw at the end of the last year, Estriel, Geo, Kenny, and Nero. Yeah, these teams were the teams that just missed champs. So, yeah, I have G2 as a 55-45. I think the Gwyn addition helps Cloud9. So, again, that kind of just, it brings me back down to a coin flip. So, if it's a 50-50, maybe you could take the team that's plus 100. But I don't have a ton of confidence in this either way. I really could see this going to either team here.
From the looks of it, a lot of that number is on Gwyn there. And he was good with Carolina, but the question is just how quickly can he make that big of an impact, and without any other major changes to Cloud9, right? That's the question there. Next up, we have Vancouver versus Team Orchid, again, another Challengers team. This is Bance, Beans, Harry, and Mythic. So again, this is actually Beans was literally a CDL player just weeks ago. He was at Champs. Bance, a classic Toronto Ultra player as well. Harry was, am I remembering him? Am I remembering it wrong? Was he on London Royal Ravens at one point.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, during the Vanguard season, I believe. I want to say, yeah. So and then Mythic, he's never been in the CDL as far as I know. Minus
Yeah.
5,000. Yeah, minus 5,000 on the money line, minus 2.5, minus 150, plus 2.5, plus 110. 77.5 point favorites in the hard point. 1.5 round underdogs in the search, and then off the board in the control. Bance wasn't particularly great at hard point. But he was pretty good at search, though. I don't know. Do you see anything playable here or not? Vancouver leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth there from champs. A little. Okay, they lost to who did they lose to? They lost to Miami, and then they beat Thieves, and then they went almost all the way. They went all the way.
Yeah, they were runner-ups. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So they went on a bit of a run here, and I think I kind of like the hardpoint spread here. Bance and Beans weren't particularly great at hardpoint, and I'm not sure about Mythic, but this seems like hardpoint seems like a clear weakness for this team. And then outside of that, I don't necessarily think I want to bet the minus 2.5, but I think there's you can make a very strong case here for a 3-0. Probably a better case for a 3-0 than with the Optic, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know. This one feels a lot like the first Group A match we talked about, Optic versus Five Fears. Granted, Team Orchid did deserve a spot here. They did place top 4 at that Challengers event. It's a team full of gentlemen from the UK, so they have that going for them. I believe it's 3 Englishmen and 1 Scotsman, so there's maybe some synergy in that regard. And yeah, like 3 guys we've heard of before, so they can maybe make some noise. I understand why the prices are a little tighter compared to the Optic game, but yeah, Surge were one of my picks to reach the final at Champs, and thankfully they came through. It was a little tricky after they lost in round 1, but it's still a pretty impressive showing. Like they had a 3-1 loss to Heretics, and then obviously the 5-3 loss in the grand finals to an Optic team that just destroyed everybody. So I'd say that's still a good showing, like even to force the map 8. But their wins, right? A sweep of Thieves, very impressive. A sweep of Ultra right after that, very impressive. And then a couple Game 5 wins against Miami and Boston, which are a little shaky. But again, like they split versus Miami. That, to me, made sense. Like I saw those teams as roughly equals. They beat Breach, which I would hope they would do that. And then their games against the really good teams that they played early, they were dominant. So I think Surge is still a very quality team. Their strength is clearly hard point. So, like, I get, you're like, yeah, 77.5. I don't see why they couldn't cover that. And I agree, but at a certain point, like, the number is just enormous, right? That's a big number to cover. Could they do it? Absolutely. Surge have beaten teams by 78 or more a lot throughout the year, and a lot of those teams are much better than Team Orchid. So, could it happen? Absolutely. I do wonder, though, if the veto process goes in a way where, like, the map 1 pick is Team Orchid's, not Surge's, right? Maybe Orchid only lose by 50 or something like that. I don't really see much I want to play here. You could make a case. Surge and Search and Destroy haven't been great all year. They've been kind of league average. So maybe a team like Team Orchid can catch them there. Plus 1.5 at plus 120 seems all right. If you'd rather just take the plus 225 on the money line, that's fine as well. But yeah, another match where it really feels like Surge are going to win this pretty easily, but maybe Team Orchid can pick one map off here or there. But yeah, another one where it's like, man, these challenger teams just have such a tough fight ahead of them. So maybe they can make things interesting, but most likely they're probably going to get beat.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Group B, match number 2, 100 Thieves versus Gentlemates, LAG. This one we can actually have a line for this. But LAG minus 10,000 money line, LAG 14-1, minus 2.5, minus 225, plus 2.5, plus 162, 79.5 point favorites in the hard point, 2.5 round favorites in the search, and then off the board in the control. I have that priced about right, just slightly under the minus 2.5. But yeah, it's a 3-0. It's a 3-0 or a 3-1 maybe. And I think LAG's best shot is none of them. I have them losing the search at the hard point by 80, the search by 4 and the control by 3. Weirdly enough, my model just equates that to a minus 194 on the minus 2.5. That seems a bit wrong. It seems a little soft there, to be honest with you. But again, this isn't particularly playable. I'm not gonna bet on LAG or on Thieves not having a good event again. They're here for blood, and this is some pretty easy blood to grab here. I think this is unplayable. Do you see anything playable here at all or not?
No, I think if you like 100 Thieves this week, take them in some future to win their group or to win the whole thing or whatever. If they're having a good weekend, they're steamrolling LAG like they do every time. The one thing I do think is interesting, I do think there is value in this. If I had to pick a bet to make, I would make one on the GentleMates side. I don't know exactly what it would be, but the prices on 100 Thieves are just out of control. So my model has this as a 97.3. I do think that's a touch high. My search number is maybe a little high. But yeah, like Thieves are going to be like 85 to 90% favorites in hard points and in control. Don't know how you can argue against that. And then I think search, it's probably like a 70-30, something like that. It's insane for GentleMate to even win a map in this series. I think they could maybe win the search. The plus 2.5 in that specific map at minus 138. Again, you just got to get to 4 rounds. I think that's definitely possible. This is a team of CDL players, and they have Diamond Khan on the lineup. Maybe he gives them a little boost as well. But yeah, I just worry that like 100 Thieves, right? You just showed up to champs. You were the favorite to win. You absolutely flamed out. Man, they might be on a revenge tour this weekend, and I would get out of the way if I was any other team. So, especially GentleMates. So yeah, I think these prices are insane. If I had to take something, I guess I'd take the map 2 spread for GentleMates, but even that is going to be a tough ask for them. Yeah.
Group C, match number 1, Boston versus Team War. Boston minus 5,000, minus 2.5, 59.5 point favorites in the hard point. 2.5 round favorites in the search, off the board in the control. Yeah, and I'll just say that Team War is Too Real, Assault, Bink, and Niam. I'm not sure exactly how you say that. Don't love this at all. This seems weirdly low. I guess they're just assuming that Boston kind of overperformed their champs and it's not that good. Like, if they were actually somewhat coming on towards the end there at champs, they should, like, Too Real and Assault were nothing particularly exciting in the CDL. I don't know Bink and Niam, but I don't particularly, like, I haven't heard much about. I don't hear a lot about Challenger players, but unless those 2 Challenger players are something amazing, fairly sure Boston's just better than them. So this is almost a playable minus 2.5, minus 59.5. I think those might actually be somewhat playable. What do you think here?
Yeah, so this is actually a very interesting match in my eyes. I do think Boston should be very, very big favorites. But I did just see yesterday, the Team War Twitter account, the coach came on and had a 2-minute video about a rostered move that was unannounced before he made this video. So apparently one of the players, I think Linz actually, was playing with Team War at the Champs Challengers event. And this team placed 3rd. So this is a legit Challenger team. And again, let's not forget, like, Boston had a great champs, like a 3rd place finish at champs for them, but they were the 8th seed, right? They had ups and downs throughout the year. I want to take credit as being the Boston guy on this podcast. I went to bat for them almost every week, and they were solid, and they made champs, and they made a heck of a run, and good on them. But the video that Team War published, the coach announced that Linz is not participating in the EWC and that their coach would take his place. Now, the coach has also competed in challengers throughout the year, so that's good at least that it's not like you're not bringing in Rambo Ray off the bench. It's like a guy, in the pit, in the challengers pit competing with these other guys. I don't know if it's Bink or if it's Niam, but it's one of them. That's the coach. So the odds actually on this match shifted just slightly today. I think Boston to sweep was like minus 150. Now they're minus 163. So tiny movement overall. So yeah, I would have been interested maybe in Team War had they not made this switch to add their coach into the lineup, and if they had Linz, like Linz has shown that he can play in the CDL, and you pair him up with some other solid challengers, like I don't see why they couldn't beat a Boston Breach team that had a great champs, but otherwise was very hot or cold. So yeah, I worry with the coach in the lineup, the whole thing is out of whack, and Boston will just win this pretty easily, but I'd still prefer like the match spread plus 2.5. I think Ward could definitely beat Boston in one of those first 3 maps. I don't know which one it is, but yeah, just knowing that we're maybe paying a little extra for Boston just based on what they did at champs. And granted, it was great, what the run that they went on, but at the end of the day, like Boston is still a solid CDL team, but not, I don't know if they're deserving of this high of a price tag. So if I had to take something, I'd take Team War, but this one's a total stay away from me. I'm just bummed that we're not going to see Linz in this spot for Team War. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little disappointing too, yeah. But I think the hard point spread might be the place to attack there. I think Boston is not bad at hard point, and I think Linz would have been a huge help in hard point. And generally, the people who are coaches are generally not great replacements for hard point. Could be good for search, but maybe not necessarily for hard point. So that's probably where I'd attack that there. Group C, match 2, Movistar versus Team Falcons. Movistar minus 400, that is Heretics. Team Falcons plus 275, minus 1.5, minus 163, plus 1.5, plus 120. Miami minus 35.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and 1.5 round favorites in the control.
So just something quick, you just said Miami and Heretics. This is actually Toronto Ultra.
Yes, yeah. My bad. You're right. My bad. This is Toronto. Yeah, I was looking at my
It's hard to keep track of.
Toronto. Yeah. So this is, which one is Toronto? Toronto is.
This is Toronto Ultra. Movistar KOI.
Oh, this is Toronto. Yes.
Parent.
Heretics is the other one. Yeah. Okay. My bad. Yeah, it is confusing because I thought Koi is okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. It's all the European ones who also have League of Legends teams. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So weirdly enough, I punched this in. I know I did this right. I actually did punch it in earlier as Toronto versus Las Vegas into my model. So it was correct. And weirdly enough, the model has Vegas like favored, which seems crazy. But a very close game between the two of them. The thing is, Toronto did get by London. No, sorry, Carolina, not London anymore. They got by Carolina in champs, and then they got pounded by Ultra, and then they got eliminated by, I want to say, Vancouver.
They, let's see, Ultra. So yeah, Ultra 3-1 over Ravens. Then they got swept by Optic, swept by Surge, and then they were done. Like you would have hoped that they could have beaten one of Optic or Surge, or at least been competitive. Beating Ravens 3-1, it was like totally expected, I would say. So yeah, a bit of a disappointing finish for sure, but nothing crazy.
And the thing is, I think we forgot that Falcons was like slowly starting to do stuff at the end of last season. Nothing particularly competitive, but when Ultra gets pounded twice in a row, it knocks them down a bit. So I don't necessarily hate Falcons on home turf. I think maybe there's a chance that Falcons could do something here. I think I'm going to go with Falcons here. I might take a plus 1.5 and maybe a couple of spreads here, and be a hard point spread as well. No, not a hard point spread. I do not favor them in hard point. I do, however, like them in the search, though. I do like them in search, just not in hard point. I have them as like a 60-point underdog in hard point. So not the hard point, but the search, they could definitely be competitive in search, and maybe control. So what do I have control at? Yep, they're competitive control too. It's not hard point, but I think could I see them grinding this out to a game 5? Yeah, I definitely could. It's Falcons home turf. Ultra struggling. They got rid of Beans and they brought in Abe. I don't know who that is. I know generally Ultra / Koi, Movistar Koi, is very good at developing talent. For example, Mercules. Like literally,
Scrap.
I mean, they probably regret getting rid of Mercules now, right? They're like, man, we should have just kept him. We could have, but now to be fair, then that caused Optic to win champ, right? It's a bit complicated in that case, but I just don't know if that was the problem with this team, if the problem was just Beans. I'm not sure if it was. I think that the team had been underperforming all year long to some extent. They were still one of the better teams, but they weren't nearly as dominant as they had been in the past. And I think Falcons was trending up. I think I'm going to take Falcons here to actually to do something here. So.
Yeah, this is a super, super interesting game. So, yeah, both teams making one-man roster moves. Like you said, Abe is in for KOI, a.k.a. Toronto Ultra, replacing Beans. Abe, I did a little research. He, I believe, was on one of the Challengers teams that placed top 2 at Champs, that being Omit and Omit Brooklyn. And Omit Brooklyn is now the P7 whatever team. We'll talk about them in a couple matches, but he was on one of those teams and I guess was a very good player. So Toronto, KOI, I should say, making this switch, seeing what this kid can do. The other 3 are still there. Kleenex, Insight, Joe Deceives. That is a solid trio. We know Joe Deceives, right, had a fantastic year, was one of the best SMGs. Kleenex, consistent player. Insight, solid. And then Falcons, replacing Priesta with TJ Haley. So I think that's an upgrade, but we'll see. TJ and the Ravens obviously flamed out in epic fashion to end the year. But the Arcides Exnid Pred combo, like, they were a solid team for the last couple months of the year. Now, solid, right, you're grading them on a curve, right? Because they were still a below average team, but they were very competitive compared to what Falcons looked like early in the season with their full Saudi Arabian team. This team is definitely like a clear step above or 2 steps above that early season team. So curious to see how big of an impact TJ makes, but like I think Toronto are definite favorites. I think the market has this about right, and I was just fudging the numbers a little bit earlier to see what they came out to. So again, I was just using full season data for both Toronto and Vegas, and unsurprisingly, Toronto looked like a smash just because there's 2 months worth of Falcons data that doesn't really matter anymore. But I just fudged the numbers to say, like, all right, let's just make Toronto a 60 to 65% favorite across the board, hardpoint, search, and control. And I think that's fair enough. You can maybe make an argument that it's a little high, it's a little low, whatever. So, you know, once you do that, they come out like a 70 to 75% chance to win. So not a lock by any means. Like, Falcons are definitely live to win this match. That would not shock me. Like you said, they're on home turf. Like, the crowd there is going to go nuts for this team. Even though they only have the one Saudi player now in Exnid, like, it's still the team that represents Saudi Arabia. Yeah, the place will go nuts for them. And we saw that Falcons, with a worse lineup last year at the EWC, like, they gave FaZe a pretty good fight, and then they almost won the series versus Lore Gaming, who were considered one of, the best challengers teams in the world at that point. This team, I expect, can do better, and I think this KOI team is beatable, but still very good. So I don't love anything here. We'll talk about the futures for Group C a little later in the show, but this could be fireworks, no doubt about it. Like, Falcons could show up, and this could be seen as like the first real big upset for this tournament. So yeah, don't be shocked if Falcons come out and perform well, but I just have so much faith in this KOI Toronto Ultra organization. I expect Abe will be fine. He's proven that in the Challenger stage. Like I said, like, Joe Deceives is still awesome. Kleenex, Insight, very, very solid players. Just looking at these teams, like, yeah, KOI, I'm taking them over Falcons every day of the week, but weird things can happen. Falcons could win this. Definitely one to keep a close eye on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then moving on to Group D. This is Miami. Miami versus Project 7. Miami minus 4,000 on the money line, minus 2.5, minus 150, 72.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and off the board in the control. So this is the team that won Challengers Champs, correct?
Runner-up. So they almost pulled it off. They might have a slightly different lineup than when they were at Challengers Champs, because like I said, like, Abe was on one of those teams that placed top 2. It might have been this team, but yeah, still a very good team, no doubt.
So, Miami, terrifying team, especially in hardpoint, so I don't know if I'd want to touch that. Or, this is I don't love this. I think I wouldn't play this one, to be honest. What are your thoughts on this one? Do you see anything that's playable here or no?
I don't know. To me, this feels a lot like Surge versus Team Orchid, although maybe I give Project 7 a slightly better chance to win just because I know, at least based on what happened at Champs Challengers, like, this team placed better than the Team Orchid team. And, like, Surge and Heretics, in my eyes, are very comparable. Like, super, super solid teams, not on the level of Thieves or FaZe or maybe even Optic at this point, but, like, super, super solid. So, that being said, like, again, these prices are crazy. Like, I think I'd prefer the match spread plus 2.5 at plus 110. Miami's strength, in my opinion, is search and destroy. Like, ever since Super came onto this team, like, their search was just nuclear for the second half of the season. So maybe I'd prefer the hard point spread on Project 7. Maybe they could just win that outright. Control for Miami, also one that kind of fluctuates at times. So, yeah, I think I definitely lean to the Challengers team in this spot. Miami, weird champs where they split their series versus Surge. They won 3-1, lost 3-2. That eliminated them. And in between there, they had a 3-2 loss to Boston, which was a bit of a head-scratcher. And then they swept FaZe in that elimination round 2 game, which is amazing. So, like, very unpredictable results for them. I don't love that going against an inferior team. Like, maybe this Project 7 team, like, push them to the brink. And yeah, like we saw last year, I know this is a year ago at this point, and it shouldn't have a huge factor in evaluating this game, but, like, Team Heretics flamed out of the EWC last year. So I think some of that had to do with, like, jet lag or travel problems for that team. And yeah, it was just weirdness. And again, like I said, it was a year ago, so we probably shouldn't care that much. But yeah, I think Project 7 could make this interesting. But yeah, I fully expect Team Heretics will come away with the W in this spot.
Yeah, you know what? Because Heretics have struggled at times with hard point. So yeah, maybe the plus 2.5, plus 72.5, maybe they can get in one of those other modes. Heretics is not a perfect team. They do have struggles at times, so we'll have to see that. Now, the last scheduled match at this point, obviously there'll be many more. FaZe versus Brooklyn Omit. FaZe minus 10,000 on the money line, minus 2.5, minus 200, 77.5 point favorites. Basically, every CDL team is 77.5 point favorites against the CDL team, against the Challengers teams. 2.5 round favorites in the search, and then off the board in the control. And just for reference, this Challengers team is Craze, Mac, Mamba, and Vivid. So this is two of those. Obviously, Mac and Vivid were CDL players. Craze and Mamba were not, but they did have Abe, as you mentioned. They did have Abe before. And actually, we forgot to mention the Challengers team before for Project 7. That's Brack, Prolute, Standy, and Yuli. And Standy is obviously a CDL player. Brack was a very old CDL player before the CDL became the CDL. Prolute, I think, saw some time on a Vegas team, and Yuli, I think, also saw time in the CDL. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So those are some CDL players, and so that may be why I think they maybe could do something to Miami. This team is interesting. The bigger thing here is with FaZe is this FaZe team just done? Like, they did not have a good champs at all. They've been in bad shape for a while now. There are some of the rumblings that the only reason this team is still together was because of this EWC. If you've got the Challengers champs here and they're a legit team, now maybe a lot of that was Abe, I don't know. But if a lot of that was that, then should we be worried about this FaZe team here?
I'm not worried. Although this is the worst draw they probably could have got outside of playing another CDL team. Like, this Omit team. So this is one thing, too, I want to make note of because it is very confusing. So this Omit team was the team that won Challengers Champs. And in the grand finals, they played Omit Brooklyn. So it was Omit versus Omit. The Omit Brooklyn team is that Project 7 team we just talked about in the last match. So they're in the same group now. And I think to make it less confusing, the Omit Brooklyn team rebranded to Project 7. I don't know. The whole thing is wacky. But yeah, so the Omit team, I'll talk about FaZe first because you asked me about FaZe directly, so I should probably answer that. I'm not too worried about them. FaZe, I think this season just was a changing of the guard in a way, and I think that was pretty clear to see once we reached the halfway mark of, okay, this FaZe team is still very good, but they've been caught. Like, this LA Thieves team is better than them, or at least equals. But I think down the stretch, we realized, okay, yeah, actually the Thieves are the best team in the league. FaZe are amazing search, but like they just don't have the hardpoint or control that Thieves did. And they didn't win the 1 seed for the first time in CDL history. It's not that FaZe like dropped off significantly. I just think they got a lot tougher competition this season. And I think that's really good for the league. Like, to have the Thieves huge step up from a year ago. The Heretics organization, Toronto's always there. Surge really put together a nice team over the last 3-4 months of the season. All these teams are building lineups that can compete with FaZe now, and that just means FaZe are going to drop more of these games down the stretch. Their showing at Champs was not great. Like, they had the second best odds to win. They placed top 6. That's a huge disappointment if you're a FaZe fan or if you're a member of the FaZe team. But like, it's still some of the best players in the world are on this FaZe team, and they're not breaking up, at least for this tournament. We know that. It's still Abizi, Simp, Celium, Draza. Those dudes are awesome. But this Omit team is fun. So in the Champs Challengers bracket, Omit kind of ran through everybody. So before the bracket play, we had group play to get the top, 12 teams maybe? Yeah. And then, so Omit, through each round, they 3-1 over Omit Brooklyn, who are the eventual runner-up. So a 3-1 out of the gate over them. They had a 3-1 win over Five Fears, who are playing Optic in that first match of the day. So a 3-1 over Omit Brooklyn, 3-1 over Five Fears. Then they get Team War, another 3-1 victory over them. War eventually placed third. And then they make the grand finals. They see Omit Brooklyn again, and it's a 4-0 sweep. So this Omit team, based on that last event, really good, like clearly the best team among those challengers teams. And dudes we've heard of. Vivid, I think, played really well for Ravens this year. And for some reason, Ravens dropped him, and I think they're, wondering why they did that. We know Mac has been a solid contributor in the league before. And then these other dudes, Craze and Mamba, like, apparently they can play because they just went out at that event against the best challengers teams in the world and pretty much smoked everybody. It could make noise, right? If FaZe look like what they did a year ago, right, when they played Falcons in that round 1, FaZe eventually won the entire tournament last year, so I don't want to bash on them. But if FaZe come out slow or aren't fully prepared, like, this Omit team is good enough to beat them. I want to make that clear. Like, 14-1, that seems like a great price. I wouldn't be shocked if they win. Plus 2.5 at plus 150 seems nice. Like, I just think these dudes prove that they can play, and I think FaZe are vulnerable enough. Yeah, they could absolutely lose a map or 2 against a team like Omit. I don't know what my favorite play is on the Omit side, but I definitely would have to side with them somewhere in this. Maybe the spread, like plus 2.5 at plus 150 is an awesome price. FaZe have struggled in hardpoint at times this year. I think they could cover 77.5 pretty easily. I think they might just win map 1. Search is tricky, but again, like, even the best search teams in the world lose maps here and there. And then Control, I guess, is a pretty big wild card as well. But yeah, FaZe are certainly deserving to be a pretty big favorite in this tournament, but like, this is a pretty tough draw for them, all things considered. So interested to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's interesting. I think your point on that is very good, that they just got caught. They're no longer clearly the best team in the league. It's like, before it was always like them and someone else, or them and 1 or 2 others. But now it's okay, there's a clear team above them. And then they're in another bracket. They're in another group of like them and Surge and Miami and all that stuff. And even Optic, they're in a group with that. And that was no longer the case. It was always before they were head and shoulders above everybody else, and that's no longer the case. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next. And this offseason is going to be fascinating in terms of how they do team construction and all this stuff. We'll have to see that next year. Futures preview, this is a graph. So just kind of looking at odds to advance out of the pool, the brackets. Again, all the CDL teams have pretty high numbers on them. Odds to win the group, again, that means they have to win 2 straight matches. Again, there's some decent numbers on some of those, but nothing too crazy on any of them. I think maybe there might be a shot there on Surge at 2-1 to win their group, but that's a bit low. Or is that 2-1? No, it's 2-1. It's not nothing crazy there. I don't think that's particularly great. Odds to reach the final. Thieves are favored -138. FaZe +120. Optic +150. And then it just goes lower from there. And then odds to win. Thieves are +150. Optic +250. FaZe +225. And then kind of just start spiraling from there. Heretics +550. Surge +600, etc. Do you see any value here? I'm not seeing a ton of value. I would rather play something along the lines of like a Surge to reach the final, maybe, but I don't even like that though. I really don't like any of these numbers. I think these numbers are fair. Right before the champs, Optic was like 10-1 to win, and that clearly is gone. You're not going to get that anymore. But I don't love FaZe. I don't love Thieves at +150. I think that's probably the best value. But is it actually are they actually going to win this? I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not seeing a ton of value. What value are you seeing? Do you see if you see any?
Yeah, so I don't see a ton in terms of the to win outright or to reach the finals markets. I did the math on like how much hold there is in each of these separate markets, and there's about a 25 to 30% hold on those bottom two compared to like odds to advance and odds to win the group. There's only about a 10% hold in each of those. So if you like any futures, like I would just point you in those directions. Like maybe take one of those 2 or 3 seeds to advance or to win the group. Personally, like Group C draws my attention. I think that one is pretty interesting, and I think it would have been super, super interesting if Linz was playing for Team War especially. But that one feels the most wide open to me. I do KOI's number to win the group. When you look at that compared to Boston, like I just have a lot more faith in that Ultra organization. And if that is the Group C championship game we get, KOI versus Boston, like I would expect KOI to be like I don't know, maybe at least like a -200 favorite, and you're getting -110. So that's nice. I know some of that price is baked into the like they might just lose to Falcons in round 1. I'm fully aware of that, but again, I have a lot of faith in that organization. I think Abe will come in and be fine. I think they've done their homework on him, and that other 3 is very solid. So that one sticks out. Another one that sticks out is FaZe, also to win their group, -175. Again, I know that Ultimate is a solid challengers team, and I know Miami just beat FaZe in champs. But again, if we get Heretics versus FaZe, if FaZe are -175, that seems awesome for a price. Again, you're not getting enormous values because these prices escalate a lot once you get to these big favorites, but I would look towards those. If you wanted to get a little funky, like I think Cloud9, they have the second best odds to win Group A, and I could see it happening. Like if Gwyn matters a ton, if he comes in and is like what Neptune was for Surge, or what Super was to Heretics, I don't see why Cloud9 could just be like a way better team all of a sudden and maybe good enough to beat an Optic team that's, riding high off their champs win, but maybe not totally locked in like they should be with a group that contains 2 other CDL teams. I don't know, 5-1 seems okay for that. Otherwise, it's tough to see. I think you can make a case for Falcons. I know I just talked about KOI and how much I like them, but right, if the TJ Haley move is a big boost for them unexpectedly, and they get the home field advantage, and they're going up against Boston and Toronto, like that's not Thieves, that's not FaZe, like those are beatable teams. I could squint and see that one too, but it's tough. I think honestly the odds makers did a pretty solid job across the board, and yeah, all these challengers teams, it's just a tough sell because the really good ones, right, Omit and that P7 team, like they're in a really tough group. They got FaZe, and we know Heretics are a solid team as well. So that's tough. And then as you go down, I've talked about Team War. They're solid, but the coach coming in for Linz is tough, even though that group is pretty open. Orchid are in a group of death. Like, Gentlemates are beatable, but I don't know how they beat Surge or Thieves. And then Five Fears in Group A. Like, they shouldn't even be here. It's 3 other CDL teams they're going up against, including the champs and 2 teams that just missed champs. So, yeah, it's a tough sell for the Challengers teams. I hope we get some chaos, but to me it looks like it's going to be a pretty chalky tournament once again, which might not be a bad thing. That just means the bracket is going to be a fun watch on Saturday and Sunday.
Slash whatever they do next year. We'll be back, so probably sometime in November / early December, give or take. I will say that this is probably going to be the last one we're going to do under the name LeanTossup. We're beginning the college football previews, and we've changed the name there, so we'll change the name here too. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're still going to be here, but the graphics are going to look different. So sorry, it's scary there, but that's okay. Don't worry, we're going to be back, and I think we're going to get Uplink back, or it's going to be not called Uplink, but it's going to be basically Uplink. So these might be the last games of Control we ever see, or for a while. So count down the amount of controls left, guys, because I think we might be getting something really fun next year. So we will see you guys next year. CDLMetrics, anything else you want to say to play us out here?
Yeah, no, it's been a fun season. Yeah, very much looking forward to the event this weekend. Just a reminder, these games are in Saudi Arabia, so they are starting very early in North America. I think, so I'm in the Mountain Time Zone. I think on Thursday the games start at 6 a.m. for me, so I might miss the first few, or the first 1 or 2, I suppose. But yeah, just something to keep in mind, right? These games are going to be on right away in the morning. Set your alarms. Enjoy the weekend. This is it for Black Ops 6. It's been a fun game to play, a fun game to watch. And yeah, I have really, really high hopes for Black Ops 7 coming in a few months. And yeah, for all you Control haters out there, this might be it. We'll see if Uplink comes in. That could be a ton of fun as well. It's been a blast. And hopefully we'll have bigger and better things coming in for next season as well.
Yeah. All right. See you, everybody.